Okay, welcome back, and I'm sorry about the little absence, the brief absence that I've had over the last day or so. It's taken everything I have to come on here today, but I'm convicted, so what I'm going to do is consolidate the King James and Message version in one video. I just pray and ask for your grace right now. It's just a lot going on in my personal life, and I'm just kind of I'm finding it challenging. But I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in, because this video is about reading the Bible, and that's what we're going to do. So this is Genesis chapter 22, the King James Version. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and saddled his ass, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up, and went into the place of which God had told him. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and saw the place far off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder, and worship, and come again unto you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, and laid it upon Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand, and a knife, and they went both of them together. Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. And he said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And they came to a place which God had told him of. And Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold him a ram caught in the thicket by its horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, and offered him up for a burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh, as it was said to this day, In the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. And the angel of the Lord called unto Abraham out of heaven the 2nd time, and said, By myself I have sworn, said the Lord, for because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thy only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as stars in heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned unto his young men, and they rose up and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham dwelt in Beersheba. And it came to pass after these things, that it was told Abraham, saying, Behold, Milcah, she hath also borne children unto my brother Nahor, who is his firstborn, and Buz his brother, and Kemuel the father of Aram, and Chesed, and Hazo, and Pildash, and Jidlaph, and Bethuel, And Bethuel begat Rebekah. These 8 Milcah did bear to Nahor, Abraham's brother, and his concubine, whose name was Roma, also bare Teba, Gaham, Tahash, and Macha. So I'm going to just go right into Genesis chapter 2, chapter 22, the message. After all this, God tested Abraham. God said, Abraham. Yes, answered Abraham, I'm listening. And he said, take your dear son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I'll point out to you. Abraham got up early in the morning and saddled his donkey. He took 2 of his young servants and his son Isaac. He had split wood for the burnt offering. He set out a place God had directed him. On the 3rd day he looked up and saw the place in the distance. Abraham told his 2 young servants, stay here with the donkey. The boy and I are going over there to worship. Then we'll come back to you. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and gave it to Isaac, his son, to carry. He carried a flint and the knife. The 2 of them went off together. Isaac said to Abraham his father, Father? Yes, my son. We have flint and wood, but where's the sheep for the burnt offering? Abraham said, Son, God will see to it that there's a sheep for the burnt offering. And they kept on walking together. They arrived at the place to which God had directed him. Abraham built an altar. He laid out the wood. Then he tied up Isaac and laid him on the wood. Abraham reached out and took the knife to kill his son. Just then, an angel of God called to him out of heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Yes, I'm listening. Don't lay a hand on that boy. Don't touch him. Now I know how fearlessly you fear God. You didn't hesitate to place your son, your dear son, on the altar for me. Abraham looked up. He saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. Abraham took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. Abraham named that place God Yireh. God sees to it. That's where we get the saying, on the mountain of God, he sees to it. The angel of God spoke from heaven a second time to Abraham. I swear, God's sure word, because you have gone through with this, and have not refused to give me your son, your dear, dear son, I'll bless you. Oh, how I'll bless you. And I'll make sure that your children flourish like stars in the sky, like sand on the beaches, and your descendants will defeat their enemies. All nations on earth will find themselves blessed through your descendants, because you obeyed me. Then Abraham went back to his young servants. They got things together and returned to Beersheba. Abraham settled down in Beersheba. After this, Abraham got the news, your brother Nahor is a father. Milcah has given him children. Uz, his firstborn, his brother Buz, Kemuel, he is the father of Aram, Kezed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel was the father of Rebekah. Milcah gave these 8 sons to Nahor, Abraham's brother. His concubine, Reumah, gave him 4 more children, Teba, Gaham, Tahash, and Maachah. So that's the end of Genesis chapter 22. And I don't really have much commentary right now, so I just pray that you guys give me some grace right now. The thing that stood out to me was Abraham's obedience. Seems he's learned a lot during his time and his walk with God over the last few decades, for sure. He'd spent all this time trying to get this child, and decades waiting for them, even making another child out of sin to get this child, trying to get to this blessing, and he's finally got this blessing after all of this time. And then God tells him to sacrifice him. Can't imagine what he felt, but because a lot of people probably would have not done that, right? But he does. He's obedient. He goes exactly where God told him to go. Gets all the ingredients for the preparation, the wood and everything, and has his son carry it up too. Son's already suspicious. Where's the lamb? Long story short, he takes him up and he's ready to go through with it. I can't imagine how hard that must have been. And how scared Isaac must have been, or confused. His father's about to slay him, But Abraham was obedient to probably the most precious thing in his life. This son that he'd waited 100 or so years to have. 100 years, I think, is when Isaac was born. So he waited a century. Technically, he waited a few decades after he got the promise from God. Still, it's a long time to wait for just one child. And then to actually have that child, and, God tells you to slay him, sacrifice him. Key point here, it's his one and only son, because, he's lost Ishmael. Ishmael's gone. He's not going to see his son anymore, that son. So all he's got is Isaac, which is the promised son. And it's his one and only son that he has left in his life. And it was supposed to be his only son anyway, to be honest. But I just don't want to throw Ishmael to the side, because he did exist, but he's not around. Abraham will never see him again. It's the point I'm making. It's his only son, Isaac. And God's asking him to sacrifice this one and only son of his, and he's going through with it. And in verse 7 is a point that really stands out to me. Right before the sacrifice, they're heading up, to do it. Isaac doesn't know what's going on. Verse 7, it says, "And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, Father. And he said, Here I am, son. And he said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? Verse 8, And Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. Basically, it's interesting. Abraham in verse 8, Isaac's already pretty suspicious. It looks as though he's playing it down. He's not telling his son what's going on, obviously. But the funny thing that he says, there's no way he could have really understood the true weight of his own words, because he doesn't have any concept of Jesus Christ. But in verse 8, And Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. The first thing I think of is Jesus. God providing himself a lamb for the offering. This is like a very paralleled chapter to that. And obviously we know that he's stopped by the angel. He doesn't have to sacrifice Isaac. But God is 100% pleased with the fact that he was that obedient. And it doesn't even matter that he messed up in the past, and the things that he did. God apparently can see his heart. And Abraham has learned a lot. The fact that he was able to and willing to go through with this request of God after everything shows how much he's grown, especially in his relationship with God and his trust and fear, it says here, in God. And God's really pleased, reiterating the blessings that are to come for him, maybe even telling him in some way that there'll be more blessings now because he did this, that he was willing to. So Isaac is spared, of course, and they get the ram and the thicket. God provides a way out. He provides a miracle, a blessing. And in a way, it's like Jesus, we don't have to die. Jesus is going to do it. So, sorry, just like thinking about a lot of things right now, just God, and I'm personally hoping that I'm looking for my own miracles like that right now. So, and this is just a very touching chapter. That's what stood out to me. I'm not really going to keep talking on and on. That's the part that stood out to me. I would love to hear what stood out to you about this chapter. And I'm going to ask you guys to, if you're watching, would you please thumb up this video just for the algorithm? I wasn't going to ever ask that stuff. I was just going to let it be like whoever finds it, but I noticed that some people do comment and things, but I don't really get a lot of thumbs up. I just get comments. And if you could thumb it up to increase the algorithm and just maybe help these Bible studies, these chapters, just help them be easier for others to find, even just a little bit. Like maybe they'll be in some sort of like sidebar of recommended videos. I'm sorry, my mind is everywhere right now. But I mean, I'm not going to force you to do it if you don't want to. That's okay. But I'm asking if you could thumb it up if you're watching. I would really appreciate it, just so that it can be more accessible to others that might be looking for a chapter a day type of Bible study. And I mean, that's about it. Apparently at the end, his brother Nahor, from earlier, I think from chapter 11ish, he's got his own family, his offspring and children and things. And Rebecca is mentioned in here. We're going to get to her very soon. But it's his granddaughter, Nahor's granddaughter. Yeah. Anyway, so that's about it. This just really, it reeks of obedience. And also, there's just this huge spotlight of Jesus Christ being the ultimate sacrifice, being, as it says here in verse 8, God providing himself a lamb for an offering. He's providing it for us to reconcile us to him. So, yeah, I'd love to hear anyone else's thoughts and what they gathered from this chapter. It's a good chapter. Just shows a lot of there's just no, even though it's this thing about Isaac being an offering, he wasn't one, but it was really about obedience to God, and God really coming through for us. Even before we knew, like, that he did. Anyway, sorry, I get really teary when I think about stuff like this. Anyway, I'm thinking about personal things about my own life right now. So, anyway, we're moving on to chapter 23. And I hope that you enjoyed this reading. And I promise I won't be so teary and emotional and weird. I'll get that under control. God bless you guys. And I'll see you in the next reading, next chapter. Bye.